Okay, there's a few slides here discussing what happens to the price of a bond through time if the yield doesn't change. This example is set up to say, look, we've got three bonds here. They have different levels of coupons. We can kind of think of this as a high coupon, a medium coupon, and a zero, a low coupon. And we want to know what happens to the price of those bonds through time. Right? Now we're going to keep the yield the same, but we're just going to see, check in on these bonds every few years and see what happens to the price of these bonds through time if we keep the yield the same, but we just check on them every time. So I'm going to assume you guys can price these things on your own, and I'm going to go through these slides kind of quickly, but I'll go ahead and do the first one for you. So the payment's 120, future value is 1,000. Let's see, we said it was going to yield 10. I think I've got everything in there. Found the price of that bond, and there it is. The answer is A. So that's how I found the price of the bond A. The only thing different about bond B is the payment is 80. And obviously bond C is a 0, so it's going to have the lowest price. So I can price all of these bonds today. All right, notice the 0 is really cheap because it doesn't pay me anything until I get to the end and get the par payment at the end. The 8% coupon is a little more than the 0, but less than the 12% coupon because its payment is less. All right. And so there's the prices at time 0, and then 3 years later I could price these again. The only thing that would be different is the end will change. Right? The payment stays the same. I'm keeping the yield the same as 10%, and I'm figuring out the price of these bonds. And here's what happens to the prices in 3 years, and then I check again in 7 years. So now N is 3. It's 7 years later. So I've got 3 years left to maturity, and there's the price of those bonds. And then I think I check it after 9 years, so now N is 1. There's only 1 year to maturity, and there's the price of those bonds. Okay, and so we're showing what happens to the price of these bonds through time at a constant yield to maturity of 10%. And the point here is C, just to show you that bond prices move towards par as they get closer to maturity. And the reason is that the last payment on this bond is par. And so the closer you get to that, then the bond just becomes worth exactly what it's going to pay you at the end. Now, you can imagine if you bought this bond, say 1 hour before it matured, well then you would get $1,000 when it matured, and that would be it. So it really wouldn't be worth, it would be worth about $1,000 to buy it if you were going to buy it 1 hour before in terms of present value. Okay, now you might say, well, what about the coupon payment? Well, the way the coupon payment works is it's prorated for how long you own the bond. In other words, if you own the bond half a year, so if you own this 12% coupon bond for half of the year, then you would get half of the coupon. Right? You'd get $60, and the person who owned it the other half of the year would get the other $60. All right? If you owned it 3/4 of the year, then you would get 3/4 of a $120 coupon bond. All right? So if you sold it 1 day before it matured, then virtually all of that coupon is going to be yours, but the person you sold it to is going to get the present value of $1,000 the next day, okay, when that bond matures. All right, so that's the point. You can see this is a graph of those same bonds. Here's the 0. It starts out very cheap and it moves toward $1,000 over time. Here's the $120, the 12% coupon bond. It starts out above par because the coupon rate is above the yield to maturity. But over time, that price is drifting down towards par. All right? So that's just the point of that example to show you that over time, bond prices get closer and closer to par. Okay, I'm going to stop here, and then I'll pick up the callable bonds in the next recording.